Yeah, so we're coming out with a white paper that addresses many issues that are not often considered when people talk about the pricing of drugs and the impact that has on patients and on the system. And what we attempt to do is use the disease I deal with, multiple myeloma, as an example where those medications really have provided life-saving opportunities for patients. We've seen a dramatic increase in the survival of patients. And our core fear is that if you have actions that come from good intentions sometimes, but that will lead to disruptions of the market, there is a real possibility of not continuing to see that progress that we have seen so far. Yeah, value is a very tough thing to define, but clearly it has some elements that are measurable. There's elements that are associated with clear economic metrics. And there's disagreement even there. How do we measure that value? How much is a year of life worth? And we believe this definition must be multifactorial and must be composed by a team of individuals, including patients. Patients obviously are the ones who are most affected by decisions that could change their access or not to some of these drugs. So we're trying to portray some of the considerations that need to be made as people talk about value, not exclusively the economic ones. Yeah, it's just hard to see what's around the corner, and that's the beauty of the times we live in. The pace of discovery, the pace of innovation is really remarkable. I tell patients what I'm telling you now, it's probably going to be different from what I will tell you 6 months. And in my particular field, for instance, we've seen 11 new drugs approved since 1999 by the FDA, all of which contributed to this greatly improved survival that I mentioned previously. Now, sometimes these drugs provide options for patients that they might get treatment for a condition and they live long enough just to be able to participate in the next clinical trial or to be able to receive the drug that is in clinical trials now. This is what we call the value of options. And one of the best examples for this is HIV. Actually, when I started training, about 30% of our admissions to the hospitals were HIV-related complications. We, in fact, built buildings that would care for HIV patients. And some patients, were able to stick with some of the medications. Some of them participated in clinical trials. And the ones who did so sometimes would get into what we call the highly active antiretroviral therapy. Some of those people now have a near normal life expectancy, but it is because of that option that was open because of that initial phase of treatment. So I think there's tremendous value in my field. We've seen, for instance, development of new molecules. We call them monoclonal antibodies. And a year and a half ago, they were obviously the talk of the town because of the benefit they provided to patients. And here we are now talking about a new modality, something called the CAR T cells, which also have a significant potential to improve the lives of our patients. If there is one takeaway, is that the analysis for the pricing of drugs needs to be done in great detail. This is not your usual elevator speech. I argue, like others do, that there is tremendous value. And I really hope that because of this value, we can envision a future where more and more patients will have opportunities that currently don't exist. And in fact, the interest that exists in drug development in cancer, an interest that attracts investors, attracts money, actually has fueled this intense development of new drugs. Absent that, then we would be in a totally different situation. You look at situations like Alzheimer's, where large pharmaceutical companies have announced they no longer want to do research because there's very little possibility of them realizing a return on investment. Now, cancer is one of the last big frontiers for the major human health hazards. We went through infectious diseases, and now I think cancer for the next 20 years will be that, and then we're going to have to be facing aging. But we can't stop right now because today's solutions are simply not good enough.